few years ago, no one had even heard of peptides, and now they're everywhere. Peptides being popular with influencers and some doctors. Apparently they can be used for everything from muscle recovery to wound care. And in the United States, certain peptides lack the approval of the FDA, that's the main regulator, and can be therefore tough to get. So this could be about to change. A group that advises the Food and Drug Administration's meeting to review 7 specific peptides to discuss whether compounding pharmacies, these are sort of off-label and they make things that should be allowed to dispense them. Previously, such panels have been made up of mostly of academics and researchers. This one includes several people who promote, prescribe or produce peptides. Dr. Jonathan Rayner is the Professor of Medicine at George Washington University and our medical analyst. Now, let's deal this in two first. First of all, whether or not peptides should be deregulated to make them more available. We can deal with the question of the panel doing it in just a second. But do you think there is valid cause for saying, no, they're overregulated, let's make it a bit easier to have them?
No, these are drugs. So the wellness community and the longevity community argue that these are, essential aids now to allow people to live longer and healthier lives. But these are real drugs. And most of them are injectable. We have in the United States the Food and Drug Administration, whose entire purpose is to ensure that the drugs that Americans use are both safe and effective. None of the agents, none of the 7 peptides under review today by this advisory committee have sufficient clinical trial data to prove that they are safe and effective. And the first of these peptides to undergo a vote today, which split 8-6 in favor of allowing compounding pharmacies to make it, has had clinical studies with a total of 30 humans. So these drugs are largely devoid of data. So why would we make it easier for people to take them?
Now, you just said about the numbers on the panel that voted. And the panel's been made up of mostly academics and that, but now apparently several people who promote or prescribe peptides. But isn't it a bit simplistic for us to say, well, those people on the panel who like peptides are going to vote for them? Or do you think that's exactly what's happened here?
And well, in fact, that's exactly what happened today. The panel split 8-6, with 4 essentially being the 7 new members who were added last month by Health Secretary RFK Jr. And the 6 no's were the academics and researchers on the panel. So that's exactly the split.
So one final question, which is Kadri. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we had Pete Hegseth, and let's take testosterone if you're over 30, and all you know the story, and people know it. Now you've got this peptides business. From your long experience, doesn't this always end up in 15 years' time with a whole raft of cases of people who've been injured, harmed, diseases, things that should not have been done, but because they were done in a hurry, and everybody then starts holding inquiries in 20 years' time about who knew what, why, when, and why it was done?
Look, this health secretary has criticized vaccines incorrectly for suggesting that they haven't been trialed in randomized placebo-controlled clinical trials. Now he's advocating that these completely untested drugs be made widely available. Look, I'm a simple doctor. I think that if I'm going to prescribe a drug that is going to be injected or ingested by a patient, I should know exactly what's in it. I should know exactly what large numbers of patients in clinical trials have encountered, what benefits have accrued, and what side effects they've had. And until you can show me that for these agents, why would I give that to a patient? Now, it may be that some of these peptides are really good and offer clear benefits. I'm all for that. Right. Let's just see the data before we allow people to inject themselves with it.
Doctor, I'm very grateful for you. Thank you very much, sir. You can see the next patient. Thank you.
Regulators are taking a closer look at peptides, which are the building blocks of proteins. An advisory panel to the US Food and Drug Administration meets this week to review restrictions on certain peptides. Some doctors and influencers say they improve muscle recovery and boost overall health. But as Dr. Sanjay Gupta now reports, not everyone agrees.
I'm a big fan of peptides. I've used them myself.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., President Trump's health secretary, is embracing peptides. And he isn't alone. The global market is projected to more than double by 2034.
Peptides. You want to know more about peptides? Look at my stash.
If you're curious about peptides but have no idea where to start, then this one is for you.
Let's start with the basics. Our bodies have 20 fundamental amino acids. When they combine in short chains, they form peptides. For instance, this one is KPV.
Let's talk about KPV.
KPV, the queen of anti-inflammation.
KPV, day 3.
Peptides help regulate different functions in the body, and synthetic versions are promising everything from building muscle to more youthful skin. In the United States, some peptides are approved by the Food and Drug Administration, like insulin and semaglutide. That's the peptide in Ozempic. But many more are not FDA approved, and they have not been proven safe or effective, including this list of 17 peptides. Until recently, people could still get these through compounding pharmacies, which made them from raw ingredients. But 3 years ago, the FDA banned them, citing significant safety concerns, including the risk of life-threatening allergic reactions. But that hardly made a dent in the demand. Peptides that were banned by the FDA were still widely bought and used, mostly through unregulated markets. They skirted the rules by labeling the peptides for research use only. And now Secretary Kennedy wants to lift that ban.
The compounding pharmacies were getting those peptides from FDA-inspected facilities, and some of them in India and China, but they were the same one that the pharmaceutical industries are buying them, and we inspect those. So you know you're getting a good product. You know you're getting what you bought, what was advertised. With the gray market, you have no idea.
This week, an FDA advisory panel is discussing reversing the ban on 7 peptides. That's even after an agency review already said the evidence does not justify letting pharmacies make any of them. Kennedy, he disagrees.
Look for a safety signal, and if there is one, then you move it. But if there's not one, then you don't.
Critics warn that would essentially reverse decades of how we approve drugs in the United States. So in many ways, this is a story about peptides, but also about how the FDA is going to handle situations like this going forward. Again, keep in mind, an advisory committee met a couple years ago and decided not to approve these peptides. They said there were concerns about safety, potentially life-threatening concerns. And now there's a new committee, a committee that is made up largely of people who prescribe peptides, who promote peptides, who produce peptides. And now they're the ones who are going to be making these recommendations about peptides. Look, supporters will say, people are taking the peptides anyway. That hasn't changed. Let's try and make them as safe as possible, take them off this unregulated market, and allow compounding pharmacies to make them here in the United States. Critics will say, look, again, there's no data here, and there are significant safety concerns. And when I say no data, when you look at certain peptides like BPC 157, that's one of the peptides that's being evaluated now. There really are primarily animal, laboratory, and what are called open label trials, meaning not placebo-controlled. Someone gives a peptide, they know they're getting a peptide, the physician knows they're giving a peptide, and they basically follow really small numbers of patients to see what happens. That's not the kind of data that the FDA typically requires for an approval. So we'll see what happens with these committee meeting hearings. They are not binding. The FDA will take them under advisement, and we'll see what the FDA ultimately decides.